The way I think about digital transformation from the entrepreneurial side is really digital first in this day and age. And it's sort of natural after, a couple decades of being largely in the software industry. Everything it sort of starts from a digital standpoint, and things that at this stage haven't been digitized, I feel like are ripe for some sort of disruption or innovation where there may be entrepreneurial opportunity.
Welcome to the Rozy Effect, where I give you the keys to lead digital transformation. I'm your host, Rozy Amponsa. Today's guest, Carey Ransom. Carey is a technology entrepreneur, executive, investor, and advisor, and has started, grown, and led 8 B2B and consumer technology companies during startup and growth phases. He's currently the president of OC4 Venture Studio, a new SoCal-focused venture studio where he and his team invest themselves and capital into founders of data-centric Saas startups. He's also host of a show and podcast featuring SoCal innovators, entrepreneurs, and leaders. Since 2003 and before OC4, Carey invested in 12 of his own or angel-funded others' ventures with a current IRR of 25% plus unrealized. Most of these ventures are SaaS, fintech, or data analytics companies. Prior to OC4, he was COO at Aspiration, the leading consumer financial firm with a conscience, where he led the firm's growth from 40 to 150 people and the build-out of infrastructure and approval as a FINRA regulated broker-dealer. Previously, he was Chief Product and Innovation Officer at Experience Consumer Services Business, where he led the new portfolio of consumer credit, financial and identity products, as well as partnerships across other Experian business units. He was also a CMO and Chief Exploration Officer of Payoff, a venture-backed consumer fintech company, where he recruited and built most of the team from 6 people to over 100. Led new initiatives and strategic partnerships, and launched Payoff's core consumer lending business. Before Payoff, he was CEO at Reach Practice, a venture-backed SaaS company which he sold to Reach Local, RLOC. Carey's over 20-year career spans executive roles in product, marketing, business development, strategy, and corporate development. Prior to Real Practice, he was VP Business Development at Brand Affinity Technologies, BAT, an internet advertising and celebrity endorsement business. Carey was VP Marketing and Corporate Development at Web Visible, forging new partnerships with companies such as AT&T, American Express, and Microsoft, creating new lines of business and helping Web Visible more than triple its revenue during his tenure. While at MessageRight, acquired by FrontBite Technologies, Carey was VP Sales and Marketing, leading the online compliance and security startups business, which was eventually acquired by Microsoft. Carey's active in the Southern California startup and investment community, and is a longtime board member of Octane and advisor to the CEO Leadership Alliance of Orange County, CLAOC. He's recruited and hired nearly 500 people in the last 15 years here, and passionately believes in purpose, culture, talent, and timing as key ingredients to successful companies. He has frequently spoken at financial technology software and online media conferences such as Saas Stock, Recurring Revenue, OutFi, Innovation Project, Frost & Sullivan, and IMA. Carey is an MBA graduate of the UCLA Anderson School of Management. In addition, he holds a BA in economics from Indiana University. His real education, though, was growing up in a multi-generational retail family business. This is going to be a great conversation when we talk about individual transformation, leading startups and change, one of the core mission for the Rozy Effect, and being able to really empower the next generation of business leaders in really disrupting industries, building and really honing in on investing in culture and people. Let's get right into it. All right, Carrie, thank you so very much for taking time to chat with me here at the Rosie Effect.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. You come to the table with such deep expertise, leading businesses really from the ground up and leading that growth in terms of people, in terms of, revenue, just being able to see the changes that organizations go through and where it's needed for them to thrive. And that's why I'm actually really excited about this conversation. So when we hear digital transformation, you've heard it in so many
Yeah.
facets. How do you define that and how do you measure success around that?
Sure. So, the way I think about digital transformation from the entrepreneurial side is really digital first in this day and age, and it's sort of natural after a couple decades of being largely in the software industry. Everything sort of starts from a digital standpoint, and things that at this stage haven't been digitized, I feel like are ripe for some sort of disruption or innovation where there may be entrepreneurial opportunity. So, the moment I see a paper form or some sort of broken manual process, I look at that and sort of salivate a little bit. And so I think what's unique is that, from a digital transformation standpoint, I think for existing companies, they have to reorient culture, they have to reorient around customer.
Mhm.
And in many cases, businesses don't really think that way. They're themselves first, kind of inside out. We tend to be outside in and thinking about how do we change the overall experience, the value proposition to the customer. So we tend to start from a customer need standpoint first and really determine, is this a real problem that people have? Do they have interest in solving that problem? And will they potentially adopt a new, largely digital solution that will make them more awesome, make their life better, and something that they're willing to pay for? And pay for meaning either actual money or potentially with their time and attention as a form of payment in some cases. But as we think about really transforming things digitally, we usually start from the customer first. And is this an opportunity to make people's lives better in a significant way, where there is a value exchange between them and the provider of that new solution? And usually that means somebody else is going to get disrupted in the process.
I'm so glad you touched on facets of, hey, this is at the brim and it's needed for change. What is the impact of culture? All of that. We're going to delve into it. When we look at what the disruption that we're living in right now, what is, from your perspective, guiding businesses, what would you say is that number one area that really has been impacted or is primed for change? And how are you seeing that transformation occur?
Sure. So obviously, in the current environment we're in right now, there's huge swaths of our economy that are being disrupted, whether people wanted that to happen this quickly or not. So there's a lot of areas of what I'd call future now happening. I mean, if you think about the education system, it's
Huge.
a lot of things that have, like Zoom, that have gotten advanced and forced into the education system much faster than it would have on a natural normal economy situation, or so whether it's the economy, the pandemic, some cultural changes happening around things like diversity and inclusion. I mean, all these are very, very compelling and positive things, in my opinion, over a longer term period. But that, typically we as humans get really uncomfortable with rapid change in the short term.
Mm.
And so those that can embrace that, and as I said earlier, really orient around customer needs now, and people's willingness to start to make changes when change is forced upon us. Some people are more adaptable to that than others. And I think we've seen in the last probably 10 years, and I think we will continue to see, whether it's forced by some of the things that have been forced upon us in recent weeks and months, or just the pace of technological change, we're going to continue to see the need to adapt, the need to acquire skills and comfort around this innovation. We're going to continue to see that happening at a faster and faster pace. And that is really uncomfortable for a lot of people, but will create a tremendous amount of opportunity for those that are really thinking ahead and planning ahead and executing around those, whether that is providing better solutions to the education system, or that is providing better solutions to how work gets done in the workplace, because a lot of us right now are forced to do that in a work from home manner. And those people that have been providing their products and services only in a real life brick and mortar type of environment are in a really tough place right now, as one example. And so having to rethink the entire value chain
Hmm.
of how various services get created and delivered is a really, really challenging one for some, but a great opportunity for others who really figure it out.
Mm, mm. I want to dig a bit deeper there because we have organizations that might not have, paid attention or paid any heed to these kind of changes. And now they're caught in the space of kind of what I like to say is like putting a bandage on
Mm-hmm.
the short-term situation. So
Sure.
how should leadership be thinking about strategies in the long term so they can actually be
Mm-hmm.
positioned to take advantage of the change and actually be customer focused, right? Doing that shift is something that happens overnight. So what is your take and advice for leadership when it comes to that long-term strategy?
Sure. So I think you have to, take a longer term view from a vision standpoint, but you have to act really aggressively in the short term. And a lot of what the advice that I give to entrepreneurs and founders is to really have that kind of why, that true north vision. Like, why are you doing this? What's your vision of what the real future could be? That's a greater future to motivate and inspire people to climb that hill with you, and know that there are a lot of paths that could lead to that, and you're probably not clear on what path is the one there from today. And you need to be okay with that, but that progress is really the key thing that you should be measuring, positive outcomes and progress, because you're going to have to shift course. I mean, think about where people were in the United States in February of this year.
Hmm.
Everything looked great for a lot of people, and then all of a sudden in March things started getting really, really chaotic for a lot of people, and some have adjusted entirely what business they're in. They were making things, and all of a sudden, instead of making whatever it was they were making, they're now making masks and gowns and other things because
Hand
there's an
sanitizer.
urgency. That's right. And so, some people have been able to adapt. That probably doesn't fit in their long-term vision of their business, but has been a deviation on this path that for some may be a permanent one, and for others may just be a course adjustment along the path because they needed some amount of revenue, or they had some other reason that they decided to go do that. And so having, and then having the people to be able to talk with about that, right? Being an entrepreneur, being a business owner in many cases is a very lonely job,
Hmm.
and having others that you can talk to, peers, coaches, advisors, is very important to both having that sounding board, those thought partners, as well as just the human aspect of it, of being able to have an outlet for your stress or your concerns or other challenges that always enter in when you're trying to build a company or change something really dramatically.
Mm, mm. At the here at the Rosie Effect, one of our goals is really inspiring the next generation of
Mm-hmm.
tech leaders, building transformative organizations, and also focusing on people. And I'm so glad you touched on
Mm-hmm.
that. And we've all witnessed sort of how COVID-19 has exposed all forms of vulnerabilities within our business
Mm-hmm.
and our processes. And one of the key things is looking at the racial tension and bias that has,
Mm-hmm.
erupted from this. And you touched on it a little bit. So let's take some time to delve into it.
Sure.
The conversation is rich. It is now. It is in all different facets. How should leadership look at taking this value and conversation and shifting it into implementation? Whether
Sure.
it's the startup phase, whether it's the transformation or the organization, how does that shift actually happen so that we're not caught in the sense of a conversation over time and nothing actually becomes implemented
Mm-hmm.
and strategized?
Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, the easiest place to start is to really think about the business you're in, the customers that you are or aim to serve, and recognize that your team is going to be way more effective as a business if they look a lot like your customer base in a more real way. And so if you are in a business that serves customers that are consumers, let's say, then your team should probably reflect a much more diverse and broad group of that customer base that you're serving. That could be age differential, that could be income differential, that could be all kinds of ethnic differential as well. And I was very fortunate early in my career to work for a world leading company called Proctor Gamble, and it was at a time when P&G was under a significant cultural transformation, and they were intentionally trying to change their organization to look much more like their customers. In the prior era, almost every person in the company had been a white male in their 20s to 60s, and at that point in time, women were actually making 2/3 of household purchase decisions. And so you have a company of white men who are making products, selling them to women making most of the decisions, and it wasn't working. And so they got way out ahead of this, and it just made all the sense in the world to me that they were doing it, and the insights and the input that they were able to get from having a team that really started to much more reflect their customers was incredible. And it led to all kinds of breakthroughs around how they messaged, what they made, how they went to market, how they worked as an organization. I mean, and so as a result, they've led the world in a lot of really interesting ways around how a company transforms and how it embraces that. And I look at them as a shining example from, a couple decades ago. And it's pretty remarkable to see how few other companies have followed their example. But I felt so fortunate because as I saw it firsthand, it made all the sense in the world, and it was obvious. And I think you can look at those kinds of examples in history and say, okay, that's a great place to start. Now, that may not be enough, but that's a great place to start. And so from there, then you can start to look at other very intentional programs to try to provide opportunities to those that maybe aren't naturally in the flow of what other opportunities might be. That could be being really proactive in outreach to intern programs or other ways to include others in the development of your company or organization. And it just starts from there. But I look at it as, it starts with recognition and then some intentionality around it. And then the possibilities are really endless from there as I think about it.
I'm so glad you brought in an experience, even though it was several decades ago. It's something that has been done, that's proven to it. You've seen the change in impact on the external and the consumer front. And so my follow-up question is then what is holding a lot back, right? Because if it still wasn't such a gaping issue, it wouldn't be as pertinent as it is today. So from your perspective, what do you think is holding back leadership when it comes to that implementation and actually being able to see kind of like what you saw, those kind of changes X decades ago?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's that, the not recognizing that they have natural bias is a place to start. Most of us want to find people who look, act, feel similar to us. For example, a lot of interviewing people, they don't recognize that they're really looking for mirroring from someone who looks like them, feels like them, that they would enjoy working with in the workplace if you focus solely on the workplace. And so as a result, we are going to be naturally biased to bring in and reinforce these kinds of really exclusionary practices, in many cases without even knowing. And so, in many cases, I think we have to train people better on how to evaluate what actually the rank order of values and skills are in a team that will lead to the best performance. And so if you are weighing let's say, diverse opinions and backgrounds and input as a high priority criteria for your team, and you put weight on that, you're going to change how you evaluate someone, and you may put tremendous weight on the fact that they are different versus someone who looks very similar or has similar background or skills. When you start to look at really hard skills, technical skills as your priority, you are going to often reinforce the historical, uh, I would say, historical filters and evaluative processes that have sort of kept things where they are. And I think you have to find a right balance, right? As an example, I've never written code and written software. I've been in the industry for 25 years, but I'm not a good candidate for a software developer job. But in the process of building software, you need a lot of different people at the table and not just software developers. And so you may be able to still create a really rich and diverse group that are part of the team that builds the products. Mm-hmm. And so there are ways to think about constructing a team beyond this one job or this one area of the business. And so I think a lot of this is about really teaching people to just think differently about how they evaluate what good looks like.
Think differently about how you're evaluating what good looks like. I'm also glad you touched on training, because when we look at this transformation, this change that you've talked about early on, with it comes training, with it comes right processing on that. And we know with it, our organizations, it's a melting pot of generations. So yes. How does leadership go about really training and structuring your organization to be well equipped to take on the new change from a cultural, from a technology perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I think you talk about multi-generation. I mean, we probably have more generations in the workplace now than we ever have at one time. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, that's really interesting. You have this notion of almost, as I've heard other people call it, the corporate elder type role, where they have potentially really interesting insights to provide that are more reflective. They can probably orient to history. They can think about things in maybe a more meta level as to what things have worked or not worked in the past. And then you have this younger generation at another extreme that's digitally native, that's super comfortable with technology, and I believe they can learn from each other. One may have a much more human, relational element to bring to the table. The other may have this very digital automation element, and those combined are, again, another place where you have diversity of thought, diversity of experience that together is probably going to lead to some of your best breakthrough ideas. And so as an organization, as a leader, really giving both sides permission, giving the younger folks permission to have a voice and have an input, and to really move away from this historical, hierarchical sort of, whether you want to call it a, military industrial hierarchy type of structure, and really to create more, fairness, equity, regardless of title. And you see really interesting companies doing things with 360-degree, whether it's evaluations or even mentoring, where I would be just as benefited from having a recent college graduate mentoring me on things that I don't understand, just like I may be able to mentor them on some things that they haven't yet experienced in their career and may want to learn from some of my experiences. So I think there are really interesting opportunities like that show, you mentioned vulnerability and leadership at the same time.
Yeah, you hit it right on, and it's really a unique opportunity too for leadership to take advantage of that.
That's right.
When we look at the impact of digital business on human capital within an organization, whether it's the impact on HR, skills, promotion, education, layoffs, What does that impact, or how have you seen organizations being impacted in those facets? And how should they go about really navigating that? Like right now in the US, I think we've reached 36 million, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of unemployment,
Mm-hmm.
right? How should organizations go about positioning themselves when it comes to this impact? And then also, because you really led a lot of entrepreneurs and you've led businesses, how should individuals go
Mm-hmm.
about their individual transformation to take advantage of the changes that's happening and upon us that we really can't control?
That's right. Evie, we've got some really interesting challenges ahead of us. I mean, with that many people uh, unemployed, we have a huge number of people that I would call underemployed. And, as a society, we're going to be a much more stable, positive society when people have hope, they have opportunity, they have purpose, they
Yes.
feel like they are contributing in a meaningful way. And I think the scary part to me is that a lot of those jobs that people had in February that don't currently exist, a lot of those may never come back. And
Yes.
so I think people have to really embrace this point in time and say, okay, how am I going to reinvent myself if that's what's needed? And they always say, the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result.
Right.
And if I keep looking for a job and those jobs that I have the skills for no longer exist, then I need to either look for new jobs or I need to develop new skills or both. And I
Mm.
think as a society, we need to really think about how we can provide skills in and skill development in new ways. Are there new apprentice programs? Are there new ways to allow people to be interns and learn as they go in a fair risk sharing way between employers and people. So I think there's a lot of really interesting entrepreneurial opportunities. And the beauty of technology is you can provide training and education and skill building in a cost effective, scalable way like never before because of platforms like Zoom and others. And so we just have to come up with new models that make sense. And when I see people doing things like income sharing agreements where I say, I'm going to invest in helping you build skills and you can pay me back later as you go get to utilize those skills in the marketplace, like those are really compelling models that I think can work for everyone involved. And so we're at the early days of this, but it is a huge issue and a huge opportunity for those who are willing to sort of be on the front end and embracing that. And I think, as individuals, we all have to step up and play a role in that as an overall society where we have to care for each other through this.
I agree with you. And I love how you touched on this essence of purpose and being able to, right,
Mm-hmm.
in being able to give back into the community. So absolutely spot on. Let's touch it just a bit on culture. And you've really spoken on it throughout the whole conversation. When you're looking in advising entrepreneurs in starting up and you've led organizations from, just a few individuals to a whole slew within an organization, what is that key thing that you keep in mind to build a culture that is ripe and well positioned for the benefit and growth of the organization? But then also, if an organization needs to do a turn, right, they need to undergo that digital transformation. That
Mm-hmm.
means culture also needs to be impacted. What it is that they need to be thinking about when it comes to transforming their organizations internally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you first and foremost is you. I think the organization itself has to have a purpose. Like, why do we exist? What are we in the business of doing? And really, as I mentioned earlier, I tend to be very customer first. How are we doing everything that we can to orient around the people that we are fortunate enough to do business with and provide our product or service to. So tend to be very customer first in how I think about that. And I think that helps on the culture side because it helps give people a sense of purpose of why do we exist and what are we doing in the world to make the world a better place.
Mhm.
And then secondly, as a leader of organizations, I lead from the point of view of really people actively choosing to bring their best self to this organization every day. And as leader, my job is to inspire them to continue to want to do that and actively make that choice. Knowing, so I tend to think of people, working alongside me. It's a privilege. I'm grateful for the fact that they are actively choosing to be part of this organization, and that my job is to continue to inspire that and continue to inspire them. And that if I stop and if I get complacent in that, there's a fair chance that they're going to opt out, and they're going to either opt out and leave, which would be really detrimental, or they're going to opt out from bringing their best every day, and that's not great for them. That's not great for the organization, and will generally have a negative impact on the culture as well. And so, for a long time, I've always believed in this, idea of like, people don't work for you, they work with you. And as a leader, our job is to inspire them to make that active choice that today I'm going to bring my best self, and I'm going to do it here. And I know why, because this is a great company with a great purpose to help others be awesome in some way.
Putting the customer first, having your team reflect the customer that you're serving. These are all really vital things that you've shared today. We are basically at the end of our conversation today. What is your sort of foundational advice as new entrepreneurs are going to be born in this new opportunity generation? You've seen it through different facets of our economies, right? So what is that big picture advice from someone like you, a mentor to potential entrepreneurs?
So my advice is go do it. There are countless new problems emerging every day that need to be solved. We need passionate, committed founders to go lead the way in solving those problems, really wrapping themselves around these various customer segments and problem types that are out there, and remind yourself that it's about serving and helping others first. And when you do that, you are going to inspire others to want to help you in that journey. And so go do it, focus on the customer, and things should progress very effectively from there.
Awesome. Where can we follow you, Carey, to glean on more of your advice?
Sure. So I'm pretty easy to find on social media. You can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Carey Ransom. I also have an organization called OC4 Venture Studio.
Yes.
You can find us at oc4v.com, and we love to work with passionate, committed founders to help them build great companies.
Super cool. At this time, Carey, I want to thank you so very much for your time. This has been an amazing conversation, so timely in the now with all the changes that individuals are experiencing. So thank you once again for your time, Carey.
Absolutely. Great to be here, Rozy, and good luck with everything.
Thank you. Until next time. All right, leaders, thank you so much for watching and listening to the Rozy Effect Show. Carey's points on really the opportunity that technology has presented for us when it comes to transformation, when it comes to the change that we really have a little control over. It's really about honing it on opportunities. And as he said, just jump in and get started. Understand your customer base and being able to serve your customer, and let that reflect the decision makers within your organization. Build a culture that is thriving, that is reflective of the purpose that you are looking to set into. This was an amazing conversation. Make sure to share it with a friend. And as you know already, please leave a rating and a review on Apple's iTunes podcast. And if you haven't already, as you know, we don't walk to the Rozy Effect, we run. So run to the rozyeffect.com. That is TheRozyEffect.com, and subscribe, because these conversations are getting even more valuable. I don't want you to miss out. Change is coming. How do we position ourselves? How do we position our organizations to really take advantage of it? Until next time, thank you for listening and watching to The Rozy Effect. I'm your host, Rozy Amponsa.